Yorkshire, England, 1985. In a quiet countryside town, flames suddenly erupted from the kitchen of Ron and May Hall's family home. Within minutes, the fire consumed everything, reduced the entire house to ashes. Sofas, wardrobes, door frames, everything was gone. But when firefighters arrived to inspect the scene, they found one thing still intact: a painting, a portrait of a little boy, crying. It had hung right in the living room, the heart of the blaze. Yet it was untouched. No burns, no smoke damage. Even the wooden frame, still glossy. At first, the firemen thought it was just a strange coincidence, until it happened again, then again. By the 10th time, the authorities had to admit something was seriously wrong. The Crying Boy, a painting from Italy, spreading disaster in England. The painting became known as the Crying Boy, or in its original Italian title, Il ragazzo che piange. It was painted sometime in the late 1940s or early 1950s by Italian artist Giovanni Bragolin, real name Bruno Amadio. A survivor of World War II, Bragolin began painting a series of orphan children, each one crying after the war ended. But one portrait stood out. A boy with haunting, tear-filled eyes, hollow, empty, like he had witnessed something unspeakable. Bragolin titled it The Crying Boy. And although it originated in Italy, the disasters linked to it seemed to strike only in the UK. But why? The Sun, the headline that ignited a national nightmare. On September 4th, 1985, British tabloid The Sun ran a blazing headline: Blazing Curse of the Crying Boy. The article detailed a wave of unexplained house fires across England, each one linked by a chilling commonality. A copy of The Crying Boy was hanging in the home. In every case, the painting was the only thing that didn't burn. The story exploded like wildfire. Within a week, over 250 fires were reported involving the painting, and in every case, the painting survived. Terrified citizens began smashing, tossing, and even burning their copies of the painting. But none were destroyed. It became a national panic. Letters poured into The Sun from readers across the country, sharing their own terrifying encounters. The painting, they said, was cursed. The fires keep coming, and so do the chilling coincidences. One Ron and May Hall's family lost their entire home, except for the untouched painting. 2. In Rotherham, Alice Harris's oven sparked a fire. Everything was destroyed, except the painting, frame, and all. 3. In Essex, just 1 week after hanging the painting, a house burned down due to an electrical short. The artwork, still hanging, perfectly upright on a blackened wall. And there were dozens more cases. Different places, different times, same outcome. Mass panic or a real curse? Skeptics offered explanations. Dr. David Clark, a psychologist from Sheffield Hallam University, blamed it on mass hysteria. People naturally look for patterns and coincidences, he said. One scary headline can trigger waves of false memories and collective hallucinations. The UK Fire Service gave a technical theory. The prints might have been made using fire-retardant ink or coated in flame-resistant varnish. But that didn't explain why other paintings from the same period, made with the same materials, burned like paper. So why was this one untouchable? Who was the boy, and is there a trapped soul inside the canvas? Once The Sun stoked national fear with the term the burning curse, journalists, paranormal investigators, and documentary crews went searching for answers. The big question was, who is the child in the painting? Giovanni Bragolin, the silent painter and the orphan that haunted him. Giovanni Bragolin, real name Bruno Amadio, worked as a church restorer after Wars. Few knew he had painted over 60 portraits of orphan children, victims of war. But the Crying Boy was unlike any other. Some rare accounts say Bragolin met a mysterious boy at an orphanage near Madrid, Spain. The child never spoke, only stared into space, tears constantly in his eyes. Bragolin became obsessed, painting the boy over and over from different angles. But only the first version, with the boy's tear-soaked eyes, shook him to the core. Then the orphanage burned to the ground. No survivors, no records, and the boy's body was never found. Urban legends turned sinister. The boy was cursed. Rumors swept through Europe's occult circles. The boy in the painting had died in a fire, or worse, had been burned alive, and his trapped soul now lived within the canvas. In Italian folklore, the boy was whispered to be El Diablo, the devil's child. Father Padre Alfonso, a retired priest in Campania, claimed the boy caused mysterious fires wherever he went. One day, a church caught fire, just because the child sat under the awning for too long. Locals said his eyes held the fire of demons. No one dared adopt him. No one approached him. And then, he vanished. Only when Bragelin painted him did the boy return, and with him brought fire to every home he entered. Strange happenings for those who own the painting. As reports of fires flooded in, many families described unexplainable signs. Cats yowling at night, staring intensely at the painting. Lights flickering, especially at 3 a.m., the so-called devil's hour. The sound of a child crying, even with no children in the house. Eyes in the painting seeming to follow people around the room. One family in Liverpool said they all had the same nightmare 3 nights in a row. A child trapped in flames, screaming for help. The next morning, their gas stove turned itself on, with no one near it. BBC's controversial test. Burn the painting live on TV. In 1985, at the height of the hysteria, the BBC aired a controversial experiment. They collected 10 copies of The Crying Boy from affected families and brought them to a professional burn facility near London. Live on television. They tried to destroy them, using blowtorches, kerosene, and gasoline. Results: 7 paintings burned partially, but the boy's face remained. 3 paintings didn't burn at all. None were completely destroyed. Material engineer Steve Punt, part of the broadcast team, said, "I've never seen a mass-produced print resist heat like this. This can't just be chance." A public warning and a mass purge. In October 1985, under public pressure, the South Yorkshire Fire Brigade issued a warning. "We advise citizens not to keep the Crying Boy painting in their homes. If concerned, please turn it into authorities for safe disposal." Within a month, over 2,500 paintings were surrendered. Many were destroyed in mass burnings, supervised by firefighters and local priests. Veteran firefighter George Mallory later told reporters, "I used to laugh off the curse until one of my teammates suffered severe burns right after removing the painting from a wall. No sparks, no exposed wires. He simply touched the painting, and his hand caught fire." When thousands of paintings were destroyed, the media frenzy died down. But that was only the beginning. Why only the UK? Why did these strange fires happen only in Britain? The Crying Boy was mass-produced and sold across Europe, with thousands of prints distributed in Germany, France, Italy, even the US and Canada. But only England saw this wave of cursed fires. Paranormal researcher Evelyn Hadley, who spent 3 years studying Bragelin's works, had a bold theory. Maybe the painting itself isn't the curse, but something invisible that came with it, a spiritual force or energy we don't yet understand. She noted that the UK versions of the painting had one unique feature, a faint marking in the lower left corner, GB. Most assumed it stood for Giovanni Bragelin. Others speculated it meant ghost-bound. There wasn't just one version of the Crying Boy. At least 27 different versions exist, each slightly different. Blonde boys, brown-haired boys, eyes looking up, heads bowed down. But only one version caused widespread fire phenomena. The one printed from 1972 to 1984 by a company called Decor Artex. Art collectors today call it the fire variant. No one knows why only this version survives fire, but it does. Every single time. Bragelin's final words. A confession left behind. Before his death in 1981, Giovanni Bragelin lived reclusively, avoiding the press and refusing interviews. But after his passing, a letter was discovered addressed to fellow painter Sergio Tapia. In it, He wrote, "I believed I was painting children devastated by war, but one child I could not explain. Each time I looked into his eyes, I no longer felt I was painting. I was recording something that already existed. If I'm guilty of anything, it's allowing him to exist through my work." The letter was never mailed, and when his old studio was searched, the original painting was nowhere to be found. The last survivor, Doris's story. In 2003, a British TV show interviewed Doris Henson, an 87-year-old woman who had kept the crying boy in her home for over 40 years and survived a kitchen fire in 1989. When asked why she never got rid of it, she said, "I lost my son in an accident. When I saw the boy in the painting, I felt like he was grieving with me. Maybe it's cursed, maybe it's a trapped soul, but I think he's just looking for someone who understands. Fire can burn down walls, but the pain in his eyes, nothing can touch that." The science of fire and one. Final theory. In 2010, physics professor James McAllister at the University of Manchester released a detailed study on the painting's materials. He found the prints were coated with a special wax compound that made them more heat-resistant. The paper was triple heat-pressed, containing asbestos fibers once used in fireproof construction. Yet even the printing company couldn't explain why these paintings resisted fire better than anything else. Which led to one last theory. Maybe Bragolin did it on purpose. Maybe he wanted the painting to never burn. Today, the crying boy remains one of the most infamous, unsolved artistic mysteries in the world. Despite scientific studies, televised tests, and decades of debate, no one has fully explained why only one version survived countless fires, why the boy's eyes unsettle everyone who sees them, or whether a soul really lives in the painting. Some believe, some don't. But one thing is certain. Not a single person who hung the original fire variant ever saw it completely burn. Not one. So if someday you stumble upon a dusty old painting, a boy with tear-soaked eyes staring right at you, would you take it home? Or would you walk away before the fire starts?